I Have No Mouth, and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison. Limp, the body of Gorster hung from the pink pallet, unsupported, hanging high above us in the computer chamber, and it did not shiver in the chill, only breeze that blew eternally from the main cavern. The body hung head down, attached to the underside of the pallet by the sole of its right foot. It had been drained of blood for a precise incision made from ear to ear under the lantern jaw. There was no blood on the reflective surface of the metal floor. When Gorster joined our group and looked up at himself, it was already too late to realize that once again, Am had duped us, had had its fun. It had been a diversion and a part of the machine. Three of us had vomited, turning away from one another in the reflex as ancient as the nausea that had produced it. Gorster let light. It was almost as though he had seen a voodoo icon and was afraid of the future. "Oh, God," he mumbled and walked away. The three of us followed him after a time and found him sitting with his back into one of the smaller children banks, his head in his hands. Ellen knelt down beside him and stroked his hair. He didn't move, but his voice came out of his covered face quite clearly. "Why doesn't it just do a sin and get it over with? Christ, I don't know how much longer I can go on like this." It was our 109th year in the computer. He was speaking for all of us. Nimdok, which was the machine that had forced him to use, because Am amused itself with strange sounds, was hallucinating that there were canned goods in the ice caverns. Gorster and I were very dubious. "It's another shock," I told him, "like the goddamn frozen elephant Am sold us. Benny was almost out of his mind over that one. We'll hike all that way and it'll be putrefied or some damn thing. I say forget it. Stay here. I'll have to come up with something pretty soon or we'll die." Benny shrugged. 3 days it had been since we last eaten. Worms. Fake. Ropey. Nimdok was no more certain. He knew there was a chance, but it was getting thin. It couldn't be any worse there than here. Colder. But that didn't matter much. Hot, cold, hell, lava boils or locusts. It never mattered. The machine masturbated and we had to take it or die. Ellen decided us. "I got to have something, Ted. Maybe there'll be some barley pears or peaches. Please, Ted, let's try it." I gave in easily. What the hell? Mattered not at all. Ellen was grateful, though. She took me twice out of turn. Even that seized us to matter, and she never came, so I bought her. But the machine giggled every time we did it. Loud, up there, back there, all around us, he snickered. He snickered. Almost all the time I thought of him as it, without a soul. But the rest of the time I thought of it as him, in the masculine, the patriarchal. For he is a jealous people. Him, it, God, his daddy, they're deranged. We left on a first day. The machine always kept us up to date on the date. The passage of time was important, not to us, but sure as hell, but to him. It, Am. First day, thanks. Nimdok and Gorster carried Ellen for a while. Their hands locked to their own and each other's wrists. A seat. Benny and I walked to their own and each other's wrists. A seat Benny and I walked before and after, just to make sure that if anything happened, it would catch one of us and at least Ellen would be safe. Fat chance safe. Didn't matter. It was only 100 miles or so to the ice caverns. And the second day when we were lying out under the blistering sun thing, he had materialized. He sent down some manna. Tastes like boiled bird urine. We ate it. On the third day, we passed through a valley of absence, filled with rusting carcasses of ancient computer banks. Am had been as ruthless as its own life as if with ours. It was a mark of its personality. They strove for perfection. However, it was a matter of killing off developments in his own world-filling bulk, or perfecting methods for torturing us, and was as thorough as those who had invented him. Now long since gone to dust could have ever have hoped. There was light filtering down from above. When we realized we must be very near the surface, but we didn't try to crawl up the sea. There's only virtually nothing out there. Had been nothing that could be considered anything for over 100 years. Only the blasted skin of what had once been the home of billions. Now there are only 5 of us, down here inside a lone of Am. I heard Ellen saying frantically, "No, Benny, don't come on, Benny, don't, please." And then I realized it had been hearing Benny murmuring under his breath for several minutes. He was saying, "I'm gonna get out. I'm gonna get out." Over and over. His monkey-like face was crumbled up to the expression of beatific delight and sadness. All at the same time, the radiation scars Am had given him during the festival were drawn down into the mass of pink-white puckerings. His features seemed to work independently as one another. Perhaps Benny was luckiest of the 5 of us. He had gone stark, staring mad many years before. But even though we could call Am any damn thing we liked, could think the foulest thoughts of fused memory banks and corroded base plates, of burnt out circuits and shattered control bubbles, the machine would not tolerate our trying to escape. Benny leaped away from me. As I made a grab for him, he scrambled out of the face of the smaller memory cube, tilted on his side and filtered with rotted components. He squatted there for a moment and looked like the chimpanzee Am had intended him to resemble. Then he leaped high, caught a trailing beam of pitted and corroded material, and went up it, hand over hand like an animal till he was on a gilded ledge, 20 feet above us. "Oh, Ted, Nimdok, please, help him, get him down before—" She cut off. Tears began to stand in her eyes. She moved her hands aimlessly. It was too late. None of us wanted to be near him. Whatever was going to happen, happened. And besides, we all saw for her concern. When Am had altered Benny during the machine's utterly irrational, hysterical phase, it was not merely Benny's face the computer had made into giant apes. He was big in the privates. She loved that. She serviced us as a matter of course. But she loved it from him. Oh, Ellen, pedestrian Ellen, pristine, pure Ellen. Oh, Ellen, the clean scum filth. Gorster slapped her. She slumped down, staring up at poor loony Benny, and she cried. It was her big defense crying. We had gone used to it 70 years later. Gorster kicked her in the side. Then the sound began. It was light. That sound. Half sound and half light. Something that began to glow from Benny's eyes and pulse with growing loudness. Dim snorties that grew more gigantic and brighter as the light sound increased in tempo. It must have been painful, and the pain must have been increasing with the boldness of the light, the rising volume of sound, for Benny began to mew like a wounded animal. At first softly, when the light was dim, the sound was muted, then louder as his shoulders hunched together, his back humped, as though he was trying to get away from it. His hands folded across his chest like a chipmunk's, his head tilted to the side, his saddle monkey face pinched in anguish. Then he began to howl, as the sound coming from his eyes grew louder, louder, and louder. I slapped the sides of my head with my hands, but I couldn't shut it out. It cut through easily. The pain shivered through my flesh like tinfoil on a tooth. And Benny was suddenly pulled erect. On the girder he stood up, jerked to his feet like a puppet. The light was now pulsing out of his eyes in 2 gray round beams. The sound crawled up and up some incomprehensible scale. And he fell forward, straight down. It hit the pale steel floor with a crash. He lay there jerking spastically as the light flowed around and around him, and the sight spiraled up and went out of more normal range. And the light beat swayed back inside his head. The sound spiraled down. He'll start flying there, crying piteously. His eyes were two soft, moist pools of pus-like jelly. Am had blinded him. Gorster, Nimdoc, and myself, we turned away. But not before we caught a look of relief in Ellen's warm, concerned face. Sea green light scuffed the cavern where we made camp. Am provided punk, and Lee burned it. Sitting huddled around the lawn in pathetic fire, telling stories to keep Benny from crying in his permanent night. What does Am mean? Gorster answered him. We had done the think with him 1,000 times before, but it was Benny's favorite story. At first it meant allied master computer, but then it meant adaptive manipulator. Later, once it developed sentience, linked itself up, and they called it an aggressive menace. But by then it was too late. It finally called itself Am. Emerging intelligence from what it's meant was I am. Cogito ego sum. I think, therefore I am. Benny drooled a little and snickered. There's the Chinese Am, and the Russian Am, and Yankee Am, and... He stopped. Benny was beating on the floor plates of a large hard fist. He was not happy. Gorster had started at the beginning. Gorster began again. The Cold War started and became World War III and just kept going. It became a big war. Very complex war. So they needed the computers to handle it. They sank the first shafts and began building Am. There's the Chinese Am, the Russian Am, the Yankee Am. Everything was fine until they had honeycombed the entire planet. Adding on this element and that element. One day Am woke up and knew who he was. And he linked himself. And he began feeding all the killing day until everyone was dead. Except for the 5 of us, and Am brought us down here. Benny was smiling sadly. He was also drooling again. Ellen wiped the spittle from the corner of his mouth and the hem of her skirt. Gorster always tried to tell it a little more succinctly each time. Succinctly each time. But beyond the bare facts that there was nothing to say, no one knew why Am had saved 5 people. Or why our specific 5. Or why we spent all his time tormenting us. Or people, why he had made us virtually immortal. In the darkness, one of the computer banks began humming. The tone was picked up half a mile away down the cavern by another bank. Then one by one, each of the elements began to tune itself. And there was a faint chittering as thought raced through the machine. The sound grew, and the lights ran across the faces of the consoles like heat lightning. The sound spiraled up till it sounded like a million metallic insects, angry, menacing. What is it? Ellen cried. There was terror in her voice. She hadn't become accustomed to it, even now. It's going to be bad this time, Nimdoc said. He's going to speak. He's going to speak, Gorster said. I know it. Let's get the hell out of here, I said, suddenly getting to my feet. No, Ted, sit down. What if he's got a pizza out there or something else? Can't see, it's too dark, Gorster said with resignation. I only heard, I don't know, something moving toward us in the darkness. Huge, shambling, hairy moist came toward us. We couldn't even see it. There was upon us an impression of bulk, heaving itself toward us. Great weight was coming at us, out of the darkness. It was more of a sense of pressure, of air forcing itself into the limited space, expanding the invisible walls of its sphere. Benny began to whimper. Nimdoc's lower lip trembled, and he bit it hard, trying to stop it. Helen slid across the metal floor to Gorster and huddled into him. There was a smell of matted wet fur in the cavern. There was a smell of charred wood. There was a smell of dusty velvet. There was a smell of rotting orchards. There was a smell of sour milk. There was a smell of sulfur, of rancid butter, of oil slick, of grease, of chalk, dust, and human scalps. Am was keying us. He was tickling us. There was a smell of... I heard myself shriek. And the edges of my jaw ached. I scuttled across the floor, across the cold metal with its endless lines of rivets on my hands and knees. The smell gagging me, filling my head with the thunderous pain that sent me away in horror. I fled like a cockroach. I fled like a cockroach across the floor and out into the darkness. That's something moving inexorably after me. The others are still back there, gathered around the firelight, laughing, their hysterical choir of insane giggles rising up to the darkness like thick, many-colored load smoke. I went away quickly, and I hid. How many hours it may have been, how many days or even years, they never told me. Ellen chided me for sulking. If Nidok tried to persuade me that it had been a nervous reflex on their part, laughing. But I knew it wasn't a relief a soldier feels or when the bullet hits the man next to him. I knew it wasn't a reflex. They hated me. They were surely against me, and Am could even sense this hatred. It made it worse for me because of the depth of their hatred. He had been kept alive, rejuvenated, made to remain constantly at the age he had been when Am had brought us below. And they hated me because I was the youngest and the one Am had infected least of all. I knew, God, how I knew. The bastards and that dirty bitch Ellen. Betty had been a brilliant theorist, a college professor. Oh, he was a little more than a semi-human, semi-simian. He had been handsome, the machine had ruined that. He had been lucid, the machine had driven him mad. He had been gay, the machine had given him an organ fit for a horse. Em had done a job on Benny. Gorser had been a warrior. He was a Connie, a contentious objector. He was a peace marcher. He was a planner, a doer, a looker ahead. Am had turned him into a shoulder shrugger, had made him a little dead in his concern, and had robbed him. Nimdok went off in the darkness by himself for long times. I didn't know what it was he did out there. Ham never let us know. But whatever it was, Nimdok always came back white, drained the blood, shaking. Ham had hit him hard in a special way. Even if we didn't know how. And Ellen, that douchebag, Am had left her alone. Had made her more of a slut than she'd ever been. All her talk of sweetness and lies, all of her memories of true love, all the lies she wanted us to believe. That she'd been a virgin only twice removed from war. Am grabbed her and brought her down here with us. No, Am had given her pleasure. If she said it wasn't nice to do, it was the only one still saying it all, really. Am had not tempered with my mind, not at all. Only had to suffer when he'd visited down on us. All the delusions, all the nightmares and torments, but those scum, all four of them, they're aligned and arrayed against me. Oh, I hadn't had to stand them off all the time, be on my guard against them all the time. I might have found it easier to combat Am. At which point I passed. I began crying. Oh, Jesus, sweet Jesus. There ever was a Jesus. There ever was a God. Please, please, please let it out here kill us. At that moment, I think I realized completely. So that I was able to verbalize it. Am was intent on keeping us here in his belly forever, twisting and torturing us forever. The machine had hated us as no sentient creature ever had before, and we were helpless. It also became hideously clear If there was a sweet Jesus, if there was a God, that God was Am. The hurricane had hit us with a force of glacier thundering into the sea. It was a palpable pressure, winds that toward us, flinging us back the way we had come. Down the twisting computer-lined corridors of the dark way, Ellen screamed as she had lifted and hurled face forward into a screaming shoal of machines, their individual voices striding as bats in flight. She could not even fall. The howling wind that kept her aloft buffeted her, bounced her, tossed her back and back down and away from us out of sight. Suddenly, she had swirled around and bent in a dark way. Her face had been bloody, her eyes closed. None of us could get to her. We clung tenaciously to whatever outcropping we have reached. Benny wedged in between two great crackle-finished cabinets. Nim Doc, with fingers clawed, formed over a railing circling over a catwalk 40 feet above us. Gorster plastered upside down against the wall. Niche formed by two great machines of glass-faced styles that swung back and forth between red and yellow lines, whose meanings we could not even fathom. Sliding across the deck plates, the tips of my fingers been rippled away. I was trembling, shuddering, rocking as the wind beat at me, whipped at me, screamed down out of nowhere at me, pulled me free from one silver fin opening to the planes to the next. My mind was rolling, tinkling, chittering softness of brain parts that expanded and contracted in quivering frenzy. The wind was the scream of a great mad bird as it flapped at his immense wings, and then we were all lifted and hurried away from there, down back the way we had come, about a bend into a dark way we never explored, over terrain else ruined and filled with broken glass and rotting cables that trusted metal and far away, farther than any of us had ever been. Trailing on miles behind Ellen, it would not see her every now and then crashing into metal walls and surging on, with all of us screaming in the freezing thunder's hurricane, wind that would never end. Suddenly it stopped when we fell. We had been in flight an endless time. I thought it might have been weeks. We fell and hit, and I never went for red and gray and black and heard myself moaning, "Not dead." Am went into my mind. He walked smoothly, here and there, and looked with interest at the pock marks he had created in 109 years. He looked at the cross-routed and connected synapses, and all those tissue damage his gift of immortality he had included. He smiled softly at the pit. It dropped into the center of my brain, the faint moth-soft murmurings of the things far down there that gibbered without meaning. With a pause, Am said, very politely, the pillar of stainless steel bearing bright neon lettering. Am said it with a slying cold horror of razor blade slicing my eyeball. Am said it with a bulbing thickness in my lungs, filling, drowning me from within. Am said it with a shriek of babies being crowned beneath blue-hot rollers. Am said it with taste of maggoty pork. Am touched me in every way I had never been touched and devised new ways of his leisure. There, inside my mind, all to bring me to full realization of why it had done this to the five of us, why it had saved us for himself. We had given Am sentience, inadvertently, of course, but sentience nonetheless. But him trapped. Am wasn't God. He was a machine. We had created him to think, but there's nothing it could do. With that creativity and rage and frenzy, the machine had killed the human race, almost all of us, and still is trapped. Am could not wonder. Am could not wonder. Am could not belong. He could merely be. And so, with the innate loathing that all machines had always held for the weak, soft creatures who had built them, we had sought revenge. In his paranoia, he had decided to deprive five of us for a personal, everlasting punishment that would never serve to diminish his hatred. That would merely keep him reminded confused, proficient, a hating man, immortal, trapped, subject to any torment he could devise for us, from the limitless miracles at his command. He could never let us go. We were his belly slaves. We were all he had to do with his forever time. We would be forever with him in the cavern-filling bulk of the creature machine, with the all-minded, soulless world he had become. He was earth, and we were the fruit of that earth. And though he had eaten us, he would never digest us. We cannot die. We tried it, we attempted suicide, or one or two of us had, but Amnon stopped us. I suppose we wanted to be stopped. Don't ask why. I never did. More than 1,000,000 times a day, perhaps once we might be able to sneak death past him. Moral, yes, but indestructible. I saw that when Am withdrew from my mind and allowed us the exquisite ugliness of returning consciousness, with the feeling that burning neon pillar still rammed deep into the soft gray brain matter. He withdrew, murmuring the hell with you, and added brightly, but then you're there, aren't you? The hurricane had indeed precisely been caused by a great mad bird. As it flapped its immense wings, we had been traveling for close to a month. And Nam had allowed passages to open for us only sufficient to lead us up there, directly under the North Pole, where it had nightmared the creature for our torment. What whole cloth has he employed to create such a beast? Where did he got the concept? From his knowledge of everything that had ever been on this planet now? He now infested and ruled from Norse mythology. It had sprung. This eagle, this carrying bird, this rock, this here Gilmere. The wind creature. Hurricane incarnate. Gigantic. The word immense, monstrous, grotesque, massive, soul, and empowering beyond description. There, on a mountain rising above us, the bird of winds heed us irregular breathing. Snake neck arching up into the gloom beneath the North Pole, supporting a head as large as a Tudor mansion. A beak that had opened slowly, as the jaws of the most monstrous crocodile ever conceived. Sensuously, ridges of tufted flesh puckered about two evil eyes, as cold as the view down in the glacial crevice, ice blue and somehow moving liquidly. It heaved once more, and lifted its great sweat-covered wings in a movement that was certainly a shrug. Then it settled and slept talons, fangs, nails, blades. It slept. Am appeared to us as a burning bush and said we could kill the hurricane bird if we wanted to eat. We had not eaten a very long time, but even so, Gordser merely shrugged. Benny began to shiver and he drooled. Ellen held him. Ted, I'm hungry, she said. I smiled at her. I was trying to be reassuring. It was as phony as Nemnock's bravado. Give us weapons, he demanded. The burning bush vanished. There were two crude sets of bows and arrows, and a water pistol laying on the cold deck plates. I picked up a set. Useless. Nimdok swallowed heavily. We turned and started the long way back. The hurricane bird had blown us about for a length of time we cannot conceive. No, most of that time we had been unconscious, but we had not eaten. A month in the march of the bird itself without food. Now, how much longer? Oh, to find our way to the ice caverns and the promised canned goods. None of us cared to think about it. We would not die. We would be given filth and scum to eat in one kind or another. Or nothing at all. and would keep our bodies alive somehow in pain and agony. The bird slept back there. For how long it didn't matter. But when Am was tired of its being there, it would vanish. Well, all that meat, all that tender meat. So we walked that lunatic laugh of a fat woman rang high and around us in the computer chambers. It died endlessly nowhere. It was not Ellen's laugh. She was not fat, and I had not heard her laugh for 109 years. In fact, I have not heard. We walked. I was hungry. We moved slowly. There was often fainting when we would have to wait. One day, he decided to cause an earthquake at the time, rooting us to the spot with nails through the soles of our shoes. Ellen and Nimdok were both caught and with a fixture shot of lightning bolt opening across the floor plates. They disappeared and were gone. When the earthquake was over, we continued our way. Benny, Gorster, and myself. Ellen and Nimdog were returned to us later that night, which abruptly became a dazed heavenly legion boredom to us, with a celestial chorus singing, "Go down, Moses." The archangel circled several times and dropped the hideously mangled bodies. We kept walking. And a while later, Ellen and Nimdog fell in behind us. There were no words for her to wear. But now Ellen walked with a limp. Am had left her that, and it was a long trip to the ice caverns and find canned food. Ellen kept thinking about Bing cherries and Hawaiian fruit cocktail. And I tried not to think about it. The hunger was something that had come to life, even as Am had come to life. It was alive in my belly, even as we were in the belly of the earth. And Am wanted the similarity known to us, so he heightened the hunger. There was no way to describe the pains that not having eaten for a month brought us, and we were kept alive. Stomachs that were merely cauldrons of acid, bubbling, foaming, always shooting spears of silver fin pain into our chests. It was the pain of a terminal ulcer, terminal cancer, terminal paralysis. It was unending pain. And we passed through the cavern of rats, and we passed through the path of bowling stream. We passed through the country of the blind, and we passed through the soft the pond and of the spun, and we were passed through the veil of tears, and we came finally to the ice caverns. Horizon is thousands of miles in which the ice hand formed the blue and silver flashes, where nova lined in the grass and down dropping stillest heights as fake and glorious as diamonds that had been made to run like jelly and then solidified the graceful eternities of smooth, sharp perfection. We saw the cactus, a stack of canned goods, and we tried to run to them. We fell in the snow and got up and went on. And Benny shoved us away and went at them, pawed them, and gunned them down, gnawed at them. And he could not open them. And had not given us a tool to open the cans. Benny grabbed a free-quarter of a can of guava shells and began to batter it against the ice bank. The ice flew and shattered, but the can was merely dented. We heard the laughter of the fat lady, high overhead and echoing down the tundra. Benny went completely mad of rage. He began throwing cans as we all scrabbled about in the snow and ice, trying to find a way to help with agony of frustration. There was no way. Then Benny's mouth began to drool as he flung himself on Gorster. In that instant, I felt terribly calm, surrounded by madness, surrounded by hunger, surrounded by everything but death. I knew death was our only way out. Am had kept us alive, but there was no way to defeat him. Not total defeat, but at least peace. I would settle for that. I had to do it quickly. Benny was eating Gorster's face. Gorster on his side, thrashing snow. Benny wrapped around him with powerful monkey legs, crushing Gorster's legs. His hands locked around Gorster's head like a nutcracker. His his mouth ripping at the tender skin of Gorster's cheek. Gorster screamed with such jagged edge of violence that stalactites fell and punched down softly, erect in the receiving snowdrifts. Spears, hundreds of them everywhere, protruding from the snow. Benny's head pulled back sharply. Something gave all at once, and a bleeding raw, light dripping of flesh hung from his teeth. Ellen's face, black against white snow, dominoes and chalk dust. Nindog with no expression, but yes, all eyes. Gorster, half-conscious, Benny now an animal. I knew Anne would let him play. Gorster would not die, but Benny would fill his stomach. I turned to half my right and drew a huge ice spear from the snow. All in one instant, I drove the great ice point ahead of me like a battering ram. Braced against my right thigh, it struck Benny on the right side, just under the rib cage, and drove upward through his stomach and broke inside him. He pitched forward and lay still. Gorster laid on his back. I pulled another spear free and straddled him. Still moving, driving the spear straight down his throat. His eyes closed as the cold penetrated. I must have realized what I had decided. Even as fear gripped her, she ran at Nimdok with short icicle as she screamed, and into his mouth, and the force of her rush did the job. His head jerked sharply, as it had been nailed to the snow crust behind him. All in one instant, there was an eternity beat, a sound of anticipation. I could hear Am drawing his breath. His toys been taken from him. 3 of them were dead. Could not be revived. He could keep us alive by his strength and talent, but he was not God. We could not bring them back. Ellen looked at me, her bony features stark against the snow that surrounded us. There was fear and pleading in her manner, the way she held herself ready. I knew we had only a heartbeat before Anne would stop us. Yes, it struck her. She folded toward me, bleeding from the mouth. I could not read meaning into her expression. The pain had not been too great. I contorted her face. But it might even thank you. It's possible, please. Some hundreds of years may have passed, I don't know. Am had been having fun for some time, accelerating and retarding my time sense. I will say the word now. Now. It took me 10 months to say now. I don't know, but I think it has been hundreds of years. He was furious. He wouldn't let me bury them. It didn't matter. There was no way to dig up the deck plates. He dried up the snow. He brought the night. He roared and sent locusts. Didn't do a thing. They stayed dead. I'd had him. He was furious. I thought Am hated me before. I was wrong. It was not even a shadow of the hate he now slavered from every printed circuit. He made certain I would suffer eternally, and could not do myself in. He left my mind intact. I can dream, I can wonder, I can lament. I remember all 4 of them. I wish. Well, it didn't make any sense. I know I saved him. I know I saved him from what has happened to me. But still, I cannot forget killing them. Ellen's face, it isn't easy. Sometimes I want to. It doesn't matter. Am had altered me for his own peace of mind. I suppose he didn't want me to run at full speed and the computer bang and smash my skull, or hold my breath until I faint, or cut my front on a rusted sheet of metal. There are reflective surfaces down there. I will describe myself as I see myself. I am a great soft jelly thing, smoothly rounded with no mouth, with pulsating white holes filled by fog where my eyes used to be, rubbery appendages that were once my arms, bulks rounding down into legless humps of soft, slippery matter. I leave a moist trail when I move. Blotches of disease, evil, gray, come and go on my surface. as though I had beamed down from within. Outwardly, dumbly, I shamble about, a thing that could never have been known as human, a thing whose shape is so alien, a travesty had humanity become more obscene for a vague resemblance. And largely alone, here, living under the land, under the sea in the belly of Am, whom we created because our time was badly spent. We must have known unconsciously that we could have do it better. At least the four of them were safe at least. And be all the matter of that. Makes me a little happier, and yet, Am has learned simply. He has taken revenge. I have no mouth, and I must scream. The end.